Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Locked In Anglers Fishing Channel. In this video we're going to break down our first big tournament of the year, an American bass up in the Pacific Northwest. It was a pretty tough tournament overall. It was pretty brutal conditions, fishing was tough, but it ended up still taking a pretty big weight to get the W.
Yeah, so the conditions coming up to the event were crazy. So Monday it snowed, Tuesday it froze, Wednesday it snowed, and then it barely creeped up like maybe 2-3 degrees up to the tournament. I mean, I think when we started that, it was like 28 degrees in the morning. It was so cold in the morning.
It was freezing. And then to put on top of that, our morning was a little rough for a handful of reasons. Notably, as you guys probably know, this was the first tournament that we fished out of my new Phoenix. Amazing boat. Still trying to figure out the cadence for how you set up the boat, apparently, because I forgot to put the drain plug in all the way. And in 28-degree water, that gets cold really quickly. Yeah. So thankfully, I put it in a little bit of the ways, but we were starting to notice after we got to our first spot that the automatic bilge kept kicking on, and then kept kicking on, and then started flowing pretty consistently. And yeah, it made for a really quick first spot for us as we then turned around and had to haul all the way back to the weigh-in. And thankfully, my tournament partner used to be a race car driver, because we did an absolute pit crew exercise to get this boat back on the water. I think it took 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding.
I went hauling down the boat launch, just sprinted to the truck, drove down the boat launch as fast as I've ever driven down a boat launch, backed it in, and then Travis goes flying out of the boat, gets it fixed, gets it drained, gets it back in the water, and probably it had to be under 5 minutes. We were in and out in a second.
I don't even know if we put on that first strap. And what really sucks is I seen Eric bend down and look,
yeah.
So I assumed the plug was in. Everything was good, but
yeah, not great.
No.
So we then restarted our morning, and it was still pretty tough out there.
Yeah, it was so tough. I mean, we roll up to our first spot. We were boat one, so we got to pick where we wanted to go. First spot, get a bite, did not connect. And then I was like, okay, well, that sucks. I mean, maybe there's just some real negative mood. So we ran to our next spot, missed another. I think you and I missed like 3 bites on one spot, and it just was getting tough. We don't know why they weren't eating.
Yeah, we went like 0 for 7 on our first first bites. It was rough.
It was not okay.
Yeah, and we started out with pretty decent sized baits. I was throwing the KGM TW Swimmer, which is a big 5-inch swim bait. A pretty big staple this time of year for these deeper smallmouth, but that was not the ticket.
No.
We were. I mean, you can see the bait; it's covered in bite marks, but they did not want to commit to it one bit.
No way. And I was starting out with like a 3.8 Kitech, because I mean that's also another staple in Washington right now. But it just was not happening. They just weren't fully eating it. I mean, it was super confusing at the beginning of the day.
Agreed. We started as we kind of started going through our spots. It went later and later. It was probably like about 11:30, and we finally got our first bite.
Yeah.
And it started to help open our eyes for it a little bit, because one, we started going up a little further north. Water temp was a little higher.
Yeah.
But just how the fish ate your bait told us right away that they were not in a feeding mood at all.
No, that fish ate it, but barely skin hook, ran all the way back to the boat, and the fish was only like 1.5 pounds, 1.25 pounds. It was a little rat thing, but it spit up a juvenile perch, so that kind of was a little tick in our mind. Because, I mean, what did you do? I think you downsized or something?
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up downsizing my bait from a 3.8 Kitech. I put down the big swim bait, and then I actually downsized my weight from a 3/4 ounce to a 1/2 ounce football head jig. And just started throwing that out there, and kind of in the same depth range, that high 30s, low 40 range that you caught your fish in, and almost immediately caught another fish. It was about a 3-pound smallmouth. But you want to talk about not wanting to eat the bait? That fish was hooked right here. Outside of the mouth with a 1/2 ounce football head. It did not want to eat. I just barely dragged it in the boat, and my lure went flying out of its mouth the second it hit the net. And we realized it was going to be a tough one.
Yeah. At that point, it was getting super tough. I mean, we sat there on that spot because we caught 2 fish right away. I mean, yeah, again, it's 11:30, 12 o'clock, like he said. So we only got 3 more hours to catch fish. But so we sat on that spot, kept casting, making the same cast over and over and over, and just never happened. So I brought up the thought, well, let's go up north. I mean, the water temps were warmer in practice, and the water temps dropped from 42, 43 down south to 41. So we're like, okay, these fish are going to be real negative. So we ran back up north, and the water temps were like 42 and a half, almost 43. Stopped on a spot, and I seen that perch in it, so I super downsized because when your fish came up, I remember him spitting out another juvenile. So I downsized to the, what was it,
3, I think.
yeah, 3.3 Kitech with a 3/8 ounce football head. I want super light. First cast, 4.5. Second cast, 2-pounder.
Yeah, and then I proceeded to sit in the front of the boat with a net as he caught the next 6 fish in about 10 casts, and completely turned our day around. We went from literally not having a fish at 11 to having a good like 13-ish pound bag. By about 12:30, just off of that spot, and they were clearly schooled up. We knew that we knew we were around fish, but that key of downsizing massively changed our perspective a lot. And they also definitely changed where they were on the point relative to where you found them in practice.
They definitely did, because in practice I caught them out off the end of the point, way out, like, so you got the ledge over here, and then the point comes way out, and they're way out at the end, and then we weren't catching them there when we first rolled up. I was like, okay, well, maybe they just moved a little bit. So I casted right on the break, right where it kind of breaks over, and boom, caught that 4-pounder, and then caught all other fish. And it was just go time. But, I mean, we only got that one big fish out there. So that was kind of the frustrating part. So we were kind of thinking, well, do we stick it out or do we go run that other stuff since we downsized and we started catching bigger fish?
Exactly. And so we realized that we had been around fish. They were clearly negative, and that key of downsizing had to mean something, because it went from no fish basically all day to all of a sudden we caught 7 or 8 right away.
7 or 8 that choked it down to the crushers.
That was way different. We went from being hooked, two fish basically hooked outside of the mouth, to pulling it out of the back of their throat and having to pour Mountain Dew down their throat to stop it from bleeding. I mean, it was a crazy big difference. So yeah, we realized, I think the law of averages were not going to be in our favor up there. We kind of plateaued and stopped culling, and so we started to move back down south to some of our areas that were good in practice and that we got some bites on in the morning. And downsizing definitely helped. We didn't have any of the schooling effects that we did up north, probably water temp driven.
Yeah.
But we started to actually catch some of those fish. As we went down, I caught a 4.5 on one of our better ledges, and it was on. You want to talk about downsizing? We went all the way to the 3-inch spark shad on a little 1/4 ounce, 3/8 ounce guppy head, Dirty Jigs guppy head, and just slowly crawled that along the bottom, and on a spinning rod in about 35 feet of water. Talk about brutal. But when the fish hit it, absolutely thumped the heck out of it. So they were targeting something, but it had to be very specific. And so we definitely, we hit 3-4 of our best spots and just started running a milk run.
Yeah, because that was just something that we really locked into, was like, I think when we seen those juvenile perch, it was just something that we really just locked in, like, hey, they want smaller fish. They don't want that big bait like they normally do. Because most of the time, this time of year, I mean, shoot, you're throwing big baits, catching big smallmouth. Like, usually it takes like 20 plus pounds to win something like this, but it was just super tough. I mean, we cycled back through, you picked up that 4-pounder, I picked up another 3, but we just had that one fish. It just was so hard to get out of.
Yeah, I think we ended up having 2 4.5s, 2 mid-3s, and then like a 2.5, and that 2.5 really bit us that way in. And so we after we ran all our spots, we just realized that there was just a couple key areas, and they all had the same ingredients. And so looking back on it, we really targeted the same structure when we actually caught our fish. In practice, they were definitely more related to the point or the flat next to the ledges that transitioned from the deep water up to the spawning flats. Maybe it was the weather, maybe it was the snow, maybe it was just later in the year. They definitely moved right up against those ledges on tournament day and mostly left the flats.
It doesn't help that our wind was kind of doing a tornado. South end was blowing south, north end's blowing from the north, and then it's kind of just spinning around.
Spinning in the middle, or just no wind in the middle. So it made it really hard to position on these, because the boat was spinning in circles, and you couldn't really get a good line to bring your bait. And so we ended up just really focusing on trying to line up the boat so we could just go right down the ledges and target those fish that were clearly schooled up, but just not very active.
Yeah, it's almost like we had to just beat it in their head, like, hey, please eat this.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's another one. Oh, no, you didn't want that time. Okay.
Yeah.
But
and basically, once they stopped wanting it, we were out of there.
Yeah.
One missed fish and we were gone.
Well, that's also, we only had 3 hours to catch all our stuff that we had. I mean, shoot. And, I mean, one thing, though, that I took from this tournament is, I don't know if we can trust that solar stuff.
Oh, yeah. So in our last video, you guys saw we broke down some of the lunar elements that we were trying to bake into our game plan. And talk about not following through with that whatsoever. Because if you remember, the lunar major was from 7 to 10.
Yeah.
We caught our first fish at 11:30.
Yeah.
And we proceeded to catch every other fish before this, except for one, outside of both the major and the minor. So I don't know how we're feeling about that one. Maybe it's a largemouth thing, but I'm not sure if I'm buying it for a smallmouth thing.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the bass just didn't get their subscription to, like, the Bassmaster magazine and look at it. I mean, I don't know what happened. But it just did not work for us.
They were clearly not doing their research of when they should be biting and where they should be biting.
Yeah, they just ignored everything and just did their own thing that weekend. But hey, we figured it out. We locked in what we needed to do.
Yeah, we made some key adjustments. Travis came up with the smaller downsize, and that changed our day massively.
Yeah.
And once we paired that with targeting the ledges around areas that kind of were breaking between the deep water and the shallow water, that had that key structure, your laydowns, your rock. Once we had all of those pieces together, we started to get bites. Wish we could have put all of them in the boat, but definitely learned a little bit from this one. That's for darn sure.
We definitely did. I mean, one thing I'm taking from that tournament is don't be afraid to downsize. I mean, shoot, downsize and caught a 4-pounder on the first cast. I mean, that's one thing I'm really going to take from this tournament and take on for longer and more of our tournaments upcoming. Because, I mean, it worked.
Both of our fish over 4 pounds came on a bait that was under 3 inches.
Yeah. Our smallest fish came on our bigger baits.
Yep.
So that makes sense, right?
Exactly. No, that's a great point. And I mean, and it was a tough day, but like when it was all said and done, we ended up weighing about 17.6 pounds and got 3rd place on the day. So despite it being brutally tough and very concentrated on the back half of the day, we ended up putting together a pretty decent bag. And I mean, I'm pretty happy with how we grinded that out. We stayed in it mentally. We tried to stay positive, tried to find little elements to tweak throughout the day, and ended up getting the job done.
Yeah, definitely did. I mean, I think some of our guys, I think the guys who won it only caught 6 fish, and we ended up catching, I don't know, 10, 12.
Exactly.
Maybe?
So I mean, it was clearly a deal where you weren't going to get numbers, and your big ones were going to be the few that ate. And that really was the story for us, because once we hit a schooling group, the size just dropped off immediately. Yeah, but hey, if you want to see kind of what we did on the water, we could see kind of some of our fish catches, see our adjustments on the water, feel free to check out our actual on the water footage. We'll be dropping that video, so feel free to check that out. It'll be at the very end of this video. But yeah, thanks for coming along with us today and really diving deep into this and to see how we locked it in on tournament day and how we break down a pretty tough fishing day.
Yeah, come check us out, and hey, share it to your buddies. We want to help try and build this channel and help build like some people and stuff. It's going to be some good content coming up.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of sweet stuff planned, and hopefully it's informational for you, so you can take some of these nuggets that we found through our time fishing in the past, through our days on the water, and use it to improve your fishing, or maybe put that one extra fish in the boat.
I mean, that's one nugget right now. Downsize. I mean, we just figured that one out together.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, feel free, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Tight lines.